It started with flowers but ended with a police report, a lawsuit, and one Karen realizing she picked the wrong neighbor to mess with. When she called 911 on me over my front yard garden, she thought she could control the whole neighborhood. Instead, she planted the seeds of her own downfall. Before we begin, tell me which country you're watching from in the comments below. I love seeing how far these HOA and Karen stories travel. And make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that bell for more stories just like this one. It all began when I decided to do something simple: fix up my front yard. After years of ignoring it, I wanted to plant a small vegetable and flower garden. Nothing fancy, just a few raised beds, some color, and a way to keep myself busy after retirement. The neighborhood I lived in wasn't managed by an official HOA, but we had an unofficial committee run by one woman who took herself way too seriously, Karen. She had no real power, no title, and no business controlling anyone. Yet she walked around like she was mayor of the block, handing out printed violation notices she made herself and measuring grass with a ruler. I should have known she'd make trouble the moment I started digging. It was a sunny Saturday when she appeared at the edge of her driveway, clutching a clipboard and glaring like I'd committed a crime. I ignored her and kept working. But by Monday there was a note taped to my door. This property does not comply with community standards. She even tried to cite HOA landscaping codes, despite the fact we didn't have an HOA. I laughed it off, at first. A week later, while I was watering my plants, a police car pulled up. The officer stepped out confused, saying they'd received a call about unauthorized land use. I nearly laughed in his face. Karen had actually called 911, the emergency line, over tomatoes and sunflowers. The officer quickly realized it was nonsense, apologized for the trouble, and left. Karen, however, stood on her porch, watching like she just saved the neighborhood from collapse. That's when I realized she wasn't going to stop. Every few days, she'd file new complaints. She claimed my compost bin smelled, though it didn't. She said my garden attracted pests, despite never seeing a single one. She even reported me to the city for agricultural violations. When the inspector came, he found everything perfectly legal and left shaking his head. But then came her biggest mistake. One morning, I found my garden completely trashed. The soil was dug up, seedlings crushed, and my irrigation hose sliced. A few hours later, Karen walked by, pretending to pick up mail, humming loudly with a grin on her face. That was it. I wasn't just rebuilding, I was declaring war. I started by calling a friend of mine who worked in landscaping. Together, we drew up plans for a new garden, one that would make Karen regret ever stepping on my property. We built tall garden walls, lined with decorative lattice and thorny roses along the edges, completely within code, of course. Then I installed solar lights that automatically lit up at night, turning my yard into a glowing showcase. Next, I added water features, small fountains, a koi pond, and flower beds that stretched beautifully across the property. It looked like something out of a magazine. Within a week, neighbors were stopping by to compliment it. Kids came to see the fish. Everyone loved it, except Karen. She started losing it. She'd stand in her driveway at night yelling that my lights were too bright and violated privacy. She took photos and claimed my fountains attracted mosquitoes. When the city inspectors came again, they found nothing wrong. That's when I decided to go one step further. I registered my garden in the local Eco-Beautification Program, a community initiative that recognized sustainable landscaping. Within a month, I received a plaque from the city and a small grant for maintaining it. They even featured it on the city's website, praising its eco-friendly design. And guess whose name was visible in the background of every photo? Karen's. Standing there, fuming, behind her hedge, arms crossed in pure rage. The recognition only made things worse for her. Now neighbors began visiting the garden regularly. Some would park in front of her house, unknowingly blocking her driveway to take pictures of the new eco-yard. She started yelling at them, demanding they leave. One of them recorded her meltdown, and that clip ended up on social media, titled "Angry Neighbor Hates Flowers." It went viral overnight. People across the country mocked her, calling her the Garden Grinch. Memes spread, news outlets picked it up, and soon Karen was the most hated neighbor in town. She tried fighting back, filing a harassment complaint against me, but when the police reviewed the footage, they saw the vandalism she'd done earlier caught on my new motion camera. She'd been recorded sneaking into my yard that night, destroying the garden. The officer told me she'd face charges for property damage and trespassing. When the court date arrived, Karen's smugness was gone. She stood silent as the judge handed down fines and ordered her to pay restitution for the garden damages. After the case, she started avoiding everyone. No more fake smiles, no more morning patrols. Her yard, once pristine, began to fall apart. The grass grew uneven, her flowers wilted, and her once proud rule enforcer reputation turned into humiliation. The irony? A few months later, she moved away, and the new neighbors were wonderful. They loved the garden, helped expand it, and even turned it into a small community project. Every spring, families now come by to help plant new flowers. Kids paint little stones to decorate the beds. What started as one small active piece turned into a neighborhood tradition, all thanks to one person's attempt to destroy it. And as for Karen, last I heard, she tried starting a community watch in her new neighborhood, but the internet never forgets. The moment she introduced herself on their Facebook group, people recognized her name and profile photo. The comments flooded with flower emojis, reminding her of the garden she could never erase. So sometimes the best revenge doesn't come from anger, it grows from patience, care, and a little bit of karma. So remember, when someone tries to tear you down, just plant something beautiful in their shadow and let time do the rest. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. More wild HOA and Karen stories are on the way, and trust me, the next one might just be even crazier.